Looks like we are live reporting from NMC17 Summer Conference in Boston. And I'm Ken Bauer here, virtually connecting. Helen's with me, Terry's with me virtually, but I'll pass it over to Michael as he desperately sends out that tweet. All yours, Michael.
Didn't get it done, but I'll do it once someone else is talking. Hello, welcome. It's a thrill to me to be here because I could sit on either side of the table. This is a session from the NMC Summer Conference 2017 in Boston, and I'm pleased to have three guests who are going to speak about NMC. So this is the NMC conference, and we've been talking, I know, in the sessions about NMC. I mean, not about NMC, we're talking about the content of the conference, but I've got some of the leadership of NMC here. And so it's a chance to kind of let you know who NMC is, why we do the conference, and also especially what we're looking at doing forward, because NMC is at an inflection point. We have a new executive director who you will re-meet. She was on a previous session. And we're looking forward to some really exciting opportunities moving forward, occupying, I think, a space in ed tech and learning that no one else has really taken up so far. And so it's a really great and exciting opportunity for us. And so I'll go ahead and let the three people on the other side of the table introduce themselves while I try to send a tweet to George so he can join us. So Krista, would you like to start?
Sure. So my name is Krista Kopp. I am the Director of Educational Technology Support and Services at Loyola Marymount University, which is located in Los Angeles. And I am proud to be a member of the NMC board. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Hi, I'm Liz Mealy, and I work for the American Alliance of Museums, which is based in DC, but we're an association that supports all kinds of museums. We have 30,000 members, 4,000 member museums, and I'm happy to be part of NMC because I'm really passionate about how museums fit into that mix, informal learning. I like regular formal learning too, but really coming at it from the informal learning, hands-on, project-based, makerspace, that kind of thing. And that's who I am.
And I am Eden Dahlstrom. I'm the Executive Director of the New Media Consortium. I think that after this event, I can officially drop the new part of the title. It's going to be the Executive Director, not the new Executive Director. And I've been here for 5 months, and it's been a wonderful experience at the conference to meet the community face-to-face. Being a completely distributed organization, I don't even get to work with staff face-to-face, and so that was special. There's about 10 of us on staff, and being able to meet the community face-to-face was an extra special treat. And this is the first of many wonderful conferences to follow.
Great. Well, let me want to let the folks online introduce themselves. Looks like George is coming in. Hooray! So why don't we let the online folks introduce themselves?
Sure, let's go Helen, then Terry, then George, if he clicks in completely, then myself.
Hi, I'm Helen DeWard. I'm in Central Ontario in Canada. And I remember meeting you last year, Krista, when we were in Rochester together, just briefly at the town hall meeting. So it's nice to connect with you again. And looking forward to hearing more, Eden, about the work you've been doing. There was some mention this morning with the Boston UMass folks that hung out with us this morning, and they were thrilled to see the excitement from your initiatives. So it's nice to hear about it.
I'm Terry Green. I'm a learning technologist in Peterborough, Ontario, just to the right of where Helen is right now. We're a medium-sized college in Ontario.
And hi, I'm George Station. I teach a first-year seminar at Cal State Monterey Bay, and in that same area. And it meets a technology and society, social science, general education requirement, and it's had a similar theme for several years. We're about to revamp it, which is why I'm sounding iffy about it. We're on the cusp of something, and I don't know what we're on the cusp of right now.
Sounds like NMC.
And I'm Ken Bauer, Associate Professor of Computer Science down here at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Guadalajara. I'm on the cusp of something. I'm not sure what. So back to you, Michael. Let us know what's going on there.
Yeah. So let me. I'm trying to figure out who. Probably I know the most about the history of NMC, but I'm going to let Liz as.
About the history of NMC?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Michael do the history of the NMC.
If we bat it back and forth.
Well, let me just give you a real quick introduction, then I'll turn it over to the three of them to fill in. So NMC's been around about 20 years. We started originally as a collaboration between universities and industry. So Apple and Adobe were very critical parts of NMC at the beginning and still play a role today. And it was really around this idea of this emerging field of new media. And for those of you who are around then, it typically involved high-end computers, very expensive hardware, very expensive software. Now, some of the software is still expensive, but the hardware has certainly gotten a lot cheaper. And the idea was that to create new media artifacts with something like Macromedia Director, you needed a place that had a very expensive computer with a big screen, like a 16-inch screen, and people with a lot of expertise because they're complicated, really complicated tools that you're using. But then with them, you could do amazing things like create interactive CD-ROMs, and that's really where.
But it also started with 11 schools, I believe, that were actual new media centers, right? So on these 11 schools were what was an actual new media center, which was where ultimately the name came from, the NMC. It was the New Media Centers Consortium, right? It was about these schools connecting to each other and sharing that multimedia. That's really where it came from. Was so yes, Adobe and Apple were part of how do we connect these schools together, but it was about 11 schools that came together. And it was this emerging technology, and it was inherently international. In fact, the meeting where it started, I believe, was in Japan. So some of the things that have been part of NMC's DNA from the beginning are this sort of collaboration between universities and solution providers, some international aspects that have always been part of NMC, although it's been difficult to sustain for all kinds of reasons. Collaboration across institutions and collaboration between disciplines, because in order to create interesting new media, it involved not only technologists but storytellers. So it's always been this group that's brought together the people who have stories to tell with the people who have the means to tell them, and where people. And I think that's what sets NMC apart from other IT like organizations or technology organizations is the creativity piece, and where does that creativity and innovation come with the technology, not just here's the tool or here's look, this is something cool to do, but how do you think outside that box? In my poetry piece this morning, one of the statements that I used is we void warranties, and I think that's really an important concept that people here take to heart, right? Like they don't look at something and go, well, this is the way it was intended to be used, so here's the way I'm going to use it. We look at it and go, how can we completely turn that thing upside down? And we've seen a lot of evidence over the last couple of days. I love the poster session yesterday, where he was taking old computers and repurposing those old computers to run 3D printers. And so just taking bits and pieces to create something new. And I think that's really at the heart of NMC. And I think there's also been a tension between this kind of hacker void the warranty thread, that ethos that's been part of NMC through its history, but also having close ties to industry that doesn't always want us to void the warranty, And I think it's, been a good creative tension. I don't think there's anything that's actually, I think, a plus, that you've got people with those different perspectives. Well, it's how do you make it scalable as well? So you may not be able to take that creativity to the next level. So how do you take that and actually share it with people? Yeah. And then somewhere in the 2000s, it's around 2004, 2005, we had a large grant from the MacArthur Foundation to create a tool called Pachyderm, which in a way was kind of a precursor of Omeka now. It was a tool for creating digital exhibits, curating exhibits. And that, I think that really was the genesis of getting museums very involved with NMC. So again, another thing that sets NMC apart is we've got this close tie to museum world.
And so the interaction between formal and informal. We also have a lot of people in the sort of storytelling and digital creation space, photographers, filmmakers, storytellers. So that's part of what I think is really cool and a lot of fun more fun at NMC than a lot of other conferences. So anything more that you want to add, or should we just turn things over to Ian? So I mean, we had
any questions from anybody.
Well, I was just going to mention too, we had one executive director, CEO for a long time, who was very influential. Oh, and I just want to mention the Horizon Report too. And so Larry Johnson was the head of NMC for many years and very influential thought leader, well known around the world. And one of the things that he deserves tons of credit for was creating the Horizon Report. And the Horizon Report's by far the best known thing that NMC does, much more so than our NMC conference. So we get 350, 400 people at the NMC conference, but the Horizon Report gets 3 million downloads over the course of a year. So very influential, much loved and much critiqued. And I think we're both proud of the love that it gets and the way it serves a lot of people's needs, but also mindful of the critiques and really interested in looking at strengthening the quality of the product so that it's even more useful and is more rigorously based on data and on research principles. And so something maybe Ian will talk a little bit about. But Larry detached from the organization last year, earlier in the year, like almost right before our last summer conference. Our last summer conference was a transition. We had Peggy Snyder, who was our fantastic interim executive director. But she really wasn't looking for changing her life to run NMC, so she did a great job filling in. We had our meeting last year in Rochester, and Helen was there. Autumn, who most of you know, was there with us also. And but now in January we hired Eden Dahlstrom, who was formerly at EDUCAUSE. And is now recovering from a respiratory disease.
I'm a nervous tickle in my throat.
Yeah.
Some people get butterflies.
So anyway, this is as Eden said, was said I think before we were on live. This was her chance to really introduce herself to the meeting. And I wonder if you would mind, because I think people at Virtually Connecting love it. I'll put you on the spot if you can remember the quote. But you presented a quote on stage yesterday from Rumi.
Yeah.
That was really beautiful. That kind of says a lot, I think, both about NMC as an organization and about your relationship to NMC, and kind of, to me, kind of, when you said that, I was like, once again, Eden's telling us we made a great choice by making her the executive director, but maybe you could start with that, Eden.
Sure. So the quote from Rumi, and it's he calls it a poem, just 2 lines, and it's, "Lovers don't find one another; they're in each other all along." And this is actually like it wasn't an acknowledgement in a book. It was just sort of there's a couple of quotes at the beginning of this book that I was starting, and kind of passed over it and caught my eye, and I flipped to the first chapter and I started reading, and then I flipped back the thing at the beginning, the Rumi quote, and I tried to read the book and I flipped back to the Rumi quote. And I'm like, I can't let this go. I was prepping for a keynote about the Horizon, and I was thinking about the summer conference, and it just sort of grasped me. And every once in a while, you come across something that resonates so well that you have to share it with other people. And I'm not generally an emotional person. In fact, I've been accused of having some Android components as part of my being. And so it was like it was kind of a big deal for me to share that with the community yesterday. But after and I had it in my slide deck and I took it out, and I had it in my slide deck and I took it out. But after being with the community and wanting to feel part of the community and wanting to be accepted by the community, I wanted to be vulnerable with the community. And I wanted to share with them this sort of deep pull and this need to be a part of the community. And so that's where that came from. And the more I learn about the NMC, the more I feel sort of an attraction to it and an interest in taking it to that next level, whatever that next level is going to be. So this is the level up, the year of leveling up.
So I want to turn it over to the folks online because and I see that they're having a little trouble hearing. So I'll just move this one. Whoever somebody's answering, we'll go ahead and pass the mic around. So hopefully you can hear well. But I want to turn it over because this is always conversation. So we want to hear from those of you, see what questions you have, and then we'll try to have a discussion. So Helen, you got a question?
If you don't mind, I'd like to jump in because the experience I had last year at the town hall meeting was a really powerful one. And I wonder how that evolved or how it shifted your thinking, any one of you.
Well, so I'll start and I want to see if, so last year I sort of moderated the town hall. And the idea between that was obviously we had just lost our executive director at that point, about a month before the conference. And the board wanted to make it very clear that we were being very deliberate in our selection of an executive director. And we wanted to hear the voices of our community before we made any formal decisions, before we wrote our job description, before we went, we wanted to make sure that we understood where the community was coming from. And I think that town hall was really seminal in two things. One, in making sure everyone that was there knew that we cared about their input. But number two, gave us enough ammo to go back and set the direction for the next several months. And so we took all of that information. We also did another town hall online. We had various different blogs. We tried to really get as much data from the community as possible. With that, wrote a job description, and with all of those tenets in mind about what were important. That's what we went looking for an executive director with. And I'm very pleased. We had a very good set of candidates. I'm very pleased that Eden was the outstanding candidate by far, and there were very good candidates. But she was the person that exuded the pieces of things that we needed. We needed someone who understood our environment, who understood education. We needed somebody who understood research. The Horizon report is based on research, but we also needed somebody who was willing to be a little bit crazy and take some chances, right? Because this is remember, this is a creative group of people, and it couldn't be somebody who was staunch about things. It needed to be somebody who reads Ruby quotes and goes back to them and comes back. And so I think all of those, I think all of those things really fed into where we see Eden taking it. But then we did a town hall yesterday.
Well, I want to say one thing about the town hall. That what struck me about the town hall last year was that I think we got a lot about the passion from that, and how passionate people were about it. How this was that some people went to a lot of different conferences, but that it wasn't the same. That this is where they felt the connections, and it was a deeper feeling. And I think that that's something that we thought a lot about, and that we took to heart. In that's a key element to. It's funny.
We're agile.
That's an important element to, now of course those were people such as yourself that were face to face, but I think we hear it other ways, and I think that's also something that, how do we expand on that passion and that connection to make more connections beyond the people that can be at the conference. So I think that's what I took away from that, is that just really, really strong sense of belonging and to each other, and that's something that is just so precious that I think we all want to work towards making happen even more.
So I'm glad you can hear better now. It sounds like maybe actually, I'm not even sure that microphone is on. Maybe it's on the, maybe it's actually coming in on the laptop mic from what they're hearing on the other end. But anyway,
I would say just leave it now. Don't push buttons.
But they're happy with how it's sounding now. I want to see what question George has, because again, I want to make sure we get time for the questions.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Very well.
Yes.
Good, thanks. Okay, so it grew into two questions while I waited and was listening to how you responded to Helen. So the first one actually is more about that tension that Michael mentioned earlier, if people might want to expand on that. And the reason I'm asking about that is because I know there's some overlap between NMC and other, consortia and so on. And there was recently also the Open Ed conference and so on, right? So I know there's a little bit of overlap in participants. I'm wondering how NMC is feeling that quest for open while still trying to maintain those Adobe long-term Adobe Apple ties and so on, that obviously, you can't really have one without the other, but there must be some discussions going on about how to move ahead, knowing that those two worlds are, I'm not going to say colliding, but there's maybe some tension between the two. And if there is, I wonder if you could express that. But if there isn't, on the other hand, then how is everybody getting along in that open ed world with the slightly more, I'm going to say product oriented, because we think in terms of, Adobe, Apple, and so on when we think about NMC, right? So that's was the question I was coming in with, but also branching off of that was our campus is once again, fortunately, kind of taking a look at digital literacy again. NMC had the digital literacy brief that came out late last year, and so we actually took a look at that locally. And it started a little bit of a conversation on our campus, which is great after some stagnant years where we weren't talking about it. And I was just wondering what you all see next for the world of digital literacy. Because when we talk about it in grand sweeping terms of other issues like web literacy, fake news, and so on these days. But is NMC looking at those more public, grander aspects of digital literacy, or are you still more focused in the previous world of InfoLit and so on? So two really wide-ranging questions, but that's it for me. I'll sit back and listen. Thanks.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So with regard to digital literacy, the paper that the research that we released last year was the beginning of a conversation. It was the broad overview landscape. And we're continuing to work with Adobe on investigating more about digital literacy and what it means to our community. So we actually have 2 additional resources scheduled to come out later this year, and they're still being developed. And the first one is sort of a digital literacy 2.0, and it's a deeper dive into what it really means to be digitally literate, paired with recommendations on how to implement or deploy strategies on campuses to improve digital literacy among students. The second one is taking a new perspective, and it is looking at the impact of digital literacy in the workforce. And so the target audience here of who we are investigating, what we're investigating, is for recent graduates that are now placed in the workforce, and what they wish they would have come in with, or what their employers wish they would have come in with regard to digital literacy. So then we can provide that information back to campuses so they can either better plan integrated digital literacy instruction, or help across the programs, or have more targeted approaches to that. And so it's one thing to publish a report and have the thud factor where it hits your digital inbox. And it's another thing to then do something with that. And so we have been setting precedents for pairing the publications with events or activities. And so we have a series of events called Beyond the Horizon. And that brings people together to, and not just a one-to-many webinar type of series. Similar to this, it could be a conversation, a sharing of ideas, interactive types of things where we can bring people that have sort of mastery in digital literacy areas, or things that they've done, where they can share with people who are looking to improve what they're doing, and so we can facilitate that conversation. Whether we'll take it to the next level, which is to, help provide, toolkits or sort of very practical how-to types of things. We're not quite sure yet. We're going to see how these next publications are received. But that's where we think we can provide some value.
Okay, I should quickly add that in our campus conversation, Brian Alexander was kind enough to join our conversation for a little bit, and that was a great stimulant to the local conversation. So I'm just gonna put in a plug. Anything that you all can do to support that kind of thing in the future as you move ahead with the next 2 phases, I'd say that would be great for the campuses.
Right.
Yeah, well, and Brian's
Right.
the lead on the Digital Literacy 2.0 project for us, and so his voice, his experience, his research, and perspective will certainly be represented in that.
You want
I
to talk?
wanna-
Do you want to talk about the editorial standards, because that was really driven by
Sure.
the experience we had with the Adobe report, and was a learning experience for NMC, and probably an example where we hadn't quite kept up with the times, and now we're really trying to act in a way that meets the standards that people expect of how you operate.
In my first 100 days, I issued an executive order.
Several. She's done more in 100 days than any executive director of NMC ever.
To have published research and publication standards, and these are actually publicly accessible on the website, drafted and vetted to members of the community, including some of the affiliates of Virtually Connected. And we also went to some of our biggest critics and said, hey, if we publish something like this and we follow these standards, would our research that is supported by corporate sponsors or foundations, things of that sort, would we maintain our credibility as an independent research publication? And we got a resounding yes. And so, we're a small nonprofit, and so we rely on partners. We rely on corporate sponsors. We have sponsors in the hall here that we hope is a way not to just bring in money to the organization, but it's to help people who are seeking solutions pair with solution providers. And that could be a vendor or a sponsor, or it could be another institution, or it could be whomever. And so we're open to partnering with folks like Adobe on digital literacy and producing material that's not commissioned, right? So we don't have an agenda, or Adobe doesn't have an agenda with us. Instead, they're funding us to do things like inform the world about digital literacy. So you guys have, the criticism preceded my tenure.
No, I just wanted to go back to his original question about that tension and where we see that openness versus. So I wanted to go back to that question, and it ties really nicely in here. I actually think that's what makes NMC unique, and I also think that that's where we can continue to make great inroads. NMC has been the ability to look beyond whether or not it was a company, whether or not it was a museum, whether or not it was a library, whether or not it was K-12, but to connect those peoples across those boundaries and to break down those silos. And at these conferences, the best part is sitting around and saying, hey, I'm Krista, right? Where are you from? What do you do? And then to hear these projects and then go, oh, I have a way that we could connect with that. And even though you work for K-12, you're doing something that's fascinating that my School of Education is really interested in. And hey, by the way, there's this company that's also having lunch with us that also is doing something that ties into it. That's where I think NMC's value and our potential massive upside is different than other organizations. It's because we're not focused on the open source. We're not focused on the companies. We're focused on the connected strings between all of those things. And I think that's where, that's where that passion comes from, is it's because I'm not coming in, this is just all about me, this is just all about what I do. I used to always describe NMC as my favorite conference to go to, because it was the only conference where I felt like I wasn't the smartest person in the room. And I would come away energized because other people had brilliant ideas that I hadn't come up with. And I love that feeling of being able to just go, I don't know, what do you guys think? And actually come away with a list of things. And so to me, that's at the heart of what we do. And if we continue to focus on that connection, I actually think we're in a nice balance between the open world and we got to keep the tension alive. That's how we keep the products fantastic, and that's how we keep people pushing for better open products. So I think having them both in the room is really the.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to end. We have to wrap up because at 2:45 we're going to have Gardner Campbell and Christina Engelbart, two of the acolytes of the world of Doug Engelbart, and Gardner also being the chair of NMC, and we call him the Gartner of Eden. And so thank you all for joining us, and Ken, you can take us out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing a lot of good history about NMC as well as the present and what we're doing going into the future.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time. And Michael, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, everyone. And I will sign us off here.